Welcome to our session today on supporting English learners' success, a practical guide for school administrators. If you would like to follow along, on the bottom of the slide deck is a bit.ly address, bit.ly supporting EL's admin. Feel free to follow along with this guide or access it at a later time. My name is Kristen Adams, and I am a staff development facilitator at the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit. And today with us is Kathy, and she and I are going to be presenting to you a practical guide for school administrators.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, Kathy.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
So today, our key concepts are three main things. We're going to be doing an introduction to ELs and policy. We're going to be discussing designing an EL educational program. And then lastly, we're going to spend some time showing you how to evaluate your plan for EL learners. As we get started, if you click on the blue words on the screen or on your bit.ly, that's where you can find the document. So our goal today is that you know and utilize pertinent information provided in PDE, or in the PA Department of Education publication, which is entitled Supporting English Learners' Success, a practical guide for school administrators. Second, we're hoping that you utilize the guide's checklist to determine action steps that may lead to increase English learners' success. Throughout our time together, we're hoping that you spend some time reflecting on your own instructional practices as a leader, and a lot of the things in here, hopefully you're already doing and have considered. At the end, we hope you spend some time with the checklist, going through it and determining what are your next action steps so that we're meeting the needs of all students.
Yeah, and that is a great document that PDE has put together, the one that Kristen just mentioned, and that is hyperlinked through here. Definitely, this is an overview, and you really need to read that whole guide if you have any questions. So I'm going to just jump in with a little bit about who are the English learners in the United States today. And it's really a very diverse population, as you know, and a growing population. Basically, we know that ELs are students whose primary language is other than English. But you might be surprised to know that many of them, or some of them, are born in the United States. They're second generation or even third generation students who in the home do not speak English. And that impacts their education, their access to our education. They may also appear to speak proficient English. And by that I mean, you might walk down the hall and talk to an EL and feel that there's no need for this student to be in the program. Their English is just fine. But we know as educators that you can speak a language without being proficient in reading or writing at an academic level. So don't be mistaken for kids who seem to speak well and are in the program. You may also have ELs who are not in the English language development program in your building or district. And that may be because they have moved out of it and are on a monitor status, or it could be that their parents denied that they don't want their child in the program. So a parent has the legal right to refuse English support for their student, but they do not have the right to refuse testing. It also may be that you have English learners who are not literate in their primary language. And again, we know from education studies that that means it's much more challenging to learn a second language when you don't know how to read and write in your primary language, because a lot of those skills, those cognitive skills, are transferable as you're learning another language. On the other hand, they may be highly literate in their primary language. They may speak several languages and pick up languages very quickly. And also very important to know about your ELs is that they may have had interrupted schooling in the home country. That's important. It actually is recorded. That information has to be gathered and recorded in their file. And your teachers need to know if they're working with a student who has had interrupted or limited schooling, That's so important to know because that means they will not know the routines of school, they will not understand the culture of school yet, perhaps, and there will be a lot of gaps in their education. So when a student is learning English, they're drawing on what they already know and can do in their primary language, so that's important to keep in mind. Kristen? Is this me? I think I'm talking about
Yes.
this. So overall, really important to know is that this isn't a choice. Meeting the needs and supporting our English learners is based in state and even federal law. So every school district must provide a program for each student whose dominant language is not English. And that program does have to meet certain criteria, which we'll talk about briefly in a minute. But this is not a choice. Teachers can't refuse to have English learners in their classroom, nor can they say that they don't make modifications or accommodations. And moving along with the laws in Pennsylvania and every state, there are procedures that must be followed for the identification of and the placement of our English learners. The booklet that we're basing this presentation on, this is found in section 1 of component 1. Every principal should be very familiar with this procedure and should make sure that their ESL coordinator in their building, their ESL specialist, is also very familiar with this, and that teachers have an idea of this. So again, the important piece here is that there is a process in place, and it looks something like this. You probably know some of this. The students are given a home language survey to take home. It has to be provided in a language parents understand. That form comes back based on what that form says. The next step is taken. The family is contacted for an informal interview. Then we review their academic records from their home country or from another state if they're available. We administer the WIDA screener if it's determined that that's the right next step, and you can see the rest of these steps. What's important to know is that this is done in a timely manner. You can't just stroll through this and take all year to do this. This has to be done, I believe it's within 30 days of the beginning of the school year, and even a shorter amount of time if they transfer in the middle of the school year. So become familiar with these procedures and make sure they're being followed in your building.
Thank you, Kathy. As we continue with component 1, section 2 is talking about designing the LIEP, which is the Language Instruction Educational Program. The LIEP is not an IEP, and it should not be confused. An IEP has to do with special education. PDE uses LIEP. However, you can talk about the ESOL program or the ELD program if that's less cumbersome and confusing. But as stated in the Pennsylvania Code, every district is required to provide an LIEP for any student whose primary language is not English. And there's a couple things that you need to consider. You need to consider the English language development to promote social and academic English proficiency and the achievement of grade level academic standards. So this must include 2 things: instruction delivered by an ESL specialist, and as stated before, appropriately modified instruction and assessment for ELs by content area teachers. All the teachers in your building that are working with ESL or ELs in your building are responsible for the instruction, modifications, and also that they are getting what they need in terms of content. Our next section, Kathy, can you talk a little bit about the reclassification and monitoring of ELs?
Yes, sorry, my screen is on delay here. So reclassification, of course, is the goal. We want students to move out of the ESL program or the ELD program, and we want them to, become proficient. But reclassification is another piece that has procedures behind it that must be followed. And these procedures are uniform across the state in many ways. So PDE does offer a reclassification tool that your ESL specialist can use. There is input from classroom teachers, whether a student is moving toward reclassification, and reclassification simply means they're leaving the program. When a student is reclassified, they are automatically put onto a 2-year monitoring window. And during that first 2 years of the monitoring, you want your classroom teachers to know if they have a student in their class who is on monitoring status, because the whole purpose of that time period is to make sure that they're ready to exit the program. So a teacher might say, I'm having trouble, this student's struggling. Could it be a language issue? I'm going to go back to the ESL specialist and talk about that. Also, you should know that the students who are not ready for reclassification after 6 years of being enrolled in a school in the United States, that also has to be reported to the state, and some work done to figure out why is the student not progressing. So again, the important takeaway from reclassification is it is a process and procedure that has to be followed carefully. Your ESL specialists should be doing this, making sure kids are put forth for reclassification. Every year there's a window for reclassification. And you should be aware of that overall policy. And again, this booklet that we're referencing has more information and will give you, if you're not confident in it, will give you a good solid overview of what you need to know.
Thank you. As we go into the next component, family and community engagement, just a couple things to keep in mind. Title I and Title III schools must provide communication in a language families understand. So from the moment they walk into your school, we need to really assess what services they might need. And part of that is found from that home language survey. When we start to understand the languages our families speak, we need to start providing communication in that language as well. That would encompass the written parent engagement policy and also regular meetings, and making sure when we send out flyers and invitations, they're in a language that your families can understand, because our ultimate goal is that our families feel welcomed in our buildings. So here are some questions that you can consider as you start to plan or look at your school and how it's designed. So what does your school communicate to your families? So starting from the front door of your school building, what is the things that your families see, and how would you feel if you came to your building for the first time? How would they be able to access assistance if needed for help about things in your school or to gain information? And what resources are available to your families for translation? So how are you planning your parent and family events? Start thinking about that and thinking about the diverse schedules that a lot of our families have, and that the typical workday might not be a reality for some of our families. They work at different schedules and different shifts. So are you planning events that allow for parents to come at different times? What partners have you developed within your community organizations, starting to make those partnerships and opportunities available to our families? And how are you designing the assessments to ensure accessibility for all our families? Our students come to our schools and their families want to be involved. So how are we allowing for instruction in their home in a language that they can understand?
And I'm just going to jump in, Kristen, and as a reminder, with family engagement, we want to be mindful of the fact that the idea or the perception of school is a cultural perception. So, share with your staff, if you have parents of English learners who you feel might be disinterested in their child's school, doesn't want to come to school, doesn't want to talk to the teacher, there may be a cultural basis for that. Or if you have parents who just show up and expect to talk to the teacher without an appointment, That might be what was normal in their culture, or might not make eye contact with you, or might be intimidated by you. So we have to understand that we have to keep chipping away and trying different things to get all parents, but especially our English learner parents, to become comfortable within our schools.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy, for that reminder. Our ultimate goal really is to help our Ls and to make sure that their rich cultural, linguistic, and family backgrounds are visible, not only in the classrooms, but in your schools, by finding ways to bring that elements of home and outside school experiences into the school. So start to look at your school, your entire school building, and the events that you plan and the communications that you send. Are we valuing all cultures? And there's a couple things that you can think about. Like I said at the beginning, if you access that checklist at the very end of the document for supporting English learner success, there's a checklist with some measurable goals that you can create for yourself. But there's a couple things that we can do to achieve this. One, bring the outside in, bringing those experiences into school, making the students that you have in your building feel like they are part of your school, that's your school is a place for everyone. And another thing that really helps connect our families is by hosting adult and family classes. Think about the partnerships that you have already created. What type of classes could they offer? Maybe during the school day, you could have a cooking class that you can bring the families in and they can experience together not only English, but they can make connections with other families in the school and get to know your school culture. So as we go into component 3, component 3 is about recruiting and training qualified teachers and staff. And there's 2 parts of this. One is our professionals, our current teachers, our ESL specialists, and our support service specialists. All of those professionals working with your students. Are you providing them with professional development opportunities that allow them to not only work together, but implement experiences with content area teachers? This should include all staff. I know it's tricky to get all of the staff together for a training, but it is critical that all your staff receive best practices and information on how to reach the needs of our Ls. So one of the ways to do that is to facilitate collaboration, that we're all working together. We all come from diverse backgrounds and experiences. Our families, our structure continues to change. So as a building leader, it is our job to get our staff to work together. So here are a few things to consider. Kathy, did you want to add something before I jump into collaborating?
I did. I'm sorry. I just
Yeah,
wanted
go
to jump
ahead.
in and say, as a former ESL teacher, this facilitating collaboration, I liked when you said as a leader, you know, this is something that you need to do. And I also want our leaders to be mindful that in many buildings, in many smaller buildings, there can be only one ESL support teacher who may even share buildings. And it is sometimes very challenging for that ESL person, the ESL specialist. You know, we're a peer with the teachers. We can't demand things from the teachers. If we need a student to be monitored, or if we need to find time together with a teacher to talk about a student, sometimes administrative support is what really makes that happen. So I think it's very, very important that if you have a small ESL staff or a single person, especially, you as the principal are keeping in touch with that person to say, what do you need to make this happen? You know, how can I support you? And be the intermediary sometimes between helping that collaboration take place between the teacher and the ESL teacher.
Absolutely. And that's a best practice no matter what size your building is, because from the moment those families walk in the door, we're gaining information from the home language surveys and the interviews. And that's a collaborative process to really determine what the student needs, because like we know, our students need many different things, and having that time to really collaborate, whether it's with other ESL teachers, if you have multiple in your school, or if there isn't, the administrator being that person to really guide that conversation is critical. So how are we providing time for co-planning? Are we allowing our staff to have time for collaboration? I know especially every year there's more and more demands on our teachers, but are we providing some chunks of time that they can collaborate? And when we're collaborating, are we setting it up for success? Are we assigning clear roles for teachers so that they can truly collaborate? And are we setting clear goals? What do we want them to accomplish? And in doing so, are we valuing the work that teachers do? And really, as an administrator, the more time you spend valuing and honoring your diverse needs in your school and all the work that your teachers are doing is time well spent. We all need encouragement, and really lighting the fire for them and allowing them for time to really spend together and connect is something that I would highly encourage you to do. If you start to look at your professional development, are you allowing that space and time for them to not only take the new information, but be able to use it? So here is the plan that we have referenced several times, and in the back of it, there is a tool for evaluating your success. And I would encourage you to make 2 to 3 goals going into a school year of what are you going to do to support the L's in your building. A few ways that we are here, but before we go in this, we want to go back to our ultimate goal. What is the ultimate goal of all this work that we're doing? L's represent an important population in our state and nation's future, and our educational commitment to ensure their academic and social success remain our top priority. All of us in education are here because we want to see the next generation of our students represented and with a fair and equitable education. So our commitment to our L's and that population of our school is critical. So here today, we discussed a couple different things. Our goals were to know and utilize the information in this guide, and we went through the 4 components with you today and gave you just a snapshot. Hopefully most of the information that you heard today is familiar to you, so you can spend some time with our second part of our goal, which was to utilize the guide's checklist and really start to make some action steps that will increase the success of your L's in your building. Here at the Carbon-Lehigh Intermediate Unit, we are here to support you. We receive information from PDE, and each district that is in IU 21 has a point of contact. And this is the way they get the most pertinent information. As we get it from PDE, we disseminate it to the points of contact. So if you're not sure who it is, you can check with your central administration, or you can email me at adamc@cliu.org, because we are here for you. We're here to support our teachers through ESL networking meetings, and we're here with our monthly newsletters to update you on what's most important. So as you go forth in the rest of your school year, thank you for considering our L's and making them an important part of your school. If you have any other questions or if there's anything we can do to support you, feel free to reach out to us and reach out to me, Kristen Adams, at the CILU. So adamc@cliu.org. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.